Hi, everyone. I'm Fara, Leff, the COO of KLUTCH Sports Group, and lucky enough to work with these two individuals who will introduce themselves shortly. I'm excited about this conversation because we were always told, and back in the day, no one really spoke about finance, and I think it was one of those things everyone would get silence on. But now it's a conversation in the forefront. I, as someone, get to talk to athletes all the time, and it is the conversation. And today we get to talk to two people who work together in what began as a partnership and became a real friendship. And I'm excited to have them introduce themselves and talk about what excites you in this growing, evolving topic of finance. Go first.
Hi, all. I'm Lois, Backon. I work at JPMorgan Chase in the Sports and Entertainment Division, and I have the honor and privilege of being in charge of relationships with talent, including athletes and celebrities and influencers and creators and all different kinds of talent, as well as sponsorships. And one of the really exciting things for me in terms of finances, back in 2015, well, I'll let Kayvon introduce himself, and then I'll come back to my story. Sorry.
Well, yeah, super blessed to be here. I'm Kayvon Thibodeaux, linebacker for the New York Football Giants. Yeah, we're going to dive into it. I mean, we're here. Right? Yeah.
Go blue. So I'll go back to my little story, but because I think it's really important to set the stage here. In 2015, when LeBron James and Mav Carter formed Uninterrupted, it was a digital marketing channel where athletes could speak their own voice about topics that weren't necessarily related to athletics. And JPMorgan Chase was the first sponsor of a show that we did with them called Kneading Dough, Kneading. And over the course of 7 years, we interviewed 37 different superstar athletes, men, women, all different genres of sports, to get their story about their financial journey, their financial history. And this became, it still is, one of the best pieces of content that's out there, because 57% of Americans feel like the hardest topic to talk to friends and family about is finances. And obviously, working at a bank, it's not only hard, but it's taboo. It's something that you don't share. So we were just trying to normalize those conversations, and that's what excites me, is that I think we've made headway. And then, as we'll discuss about our partnership, it's really just phenomenal what we've been able to do throughout the country in educating youth and adults on financial health.
Amazing. And when looking at partnerships, we always think when talking about athletes, it's a transactional relationship. But in my opinion, those relationships are usually fast and usually over fast. But when they become actual partnerships and true relationships is where they actually grow. And Lois does an unbelievable job at connecting with the athletes she works with. So how do you choose those athletes, and where do you find those successes? And what was most special about working with Kayvon?
Well, I was lucky enough to find Kayvon through KLUTCH. So way back in 2020, pre-COVID, Fara's boss, Rich, and I spoke, and I really appreciated the values that KLUTCH has in working with athletes, which is not only to have the best, strongest athletes on their roster, but also to teach the men and women character and giving back to community. So what do I look for? I look for location, I look for alignment, I look for authenticity, and whether the goals of the athlete are really aligned to what my goals, not my goals, JPMorgan Chase's goals are at the firm.
Yeah.
And for Kayvon, not only do you have to align yourselves with brands that are authentic to you, but even at the earliest stage of your career, you knew a foundation was important. So talk about what you align with, and then also the Jream Foundation and the exciting gala and all these amazing places that you're able to partner with and work with Lois.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, I was born in the city of Los Angeles. The story of finances started super young. Just a small backstory. I grew up, in the city, not having much, just understanding that, kind of the future was where the greatness lied. Just meaning that, what I wanted to do, I had to kind of set it up. It all had to be a plan. Coming into the NFL, there are a lot of guys, you hear the rags to riches story on, how everybody's life changed when, they were drafted. For me, I didn't want to tell that same story, right? I wanted to be a guy who told the story of having a plan and having enough discipline and enough will to execute that plan. So coming out of high school, when you speak of the LeBron, the uninterrupted era, that was my era, kind of growing up and seeing, the tracks being laid. And when I got to college, that's when everything started to fall in line and understanding that, finances were key. We can keep diving. I forgot the question. I was
Good information, but with that, talk about
with
the Jream Foundation.
Yeah, exactly. So, coming into college, I understood that I had a lot of people pouring into my life. Not just people that I was coming across, but people, who were always there. And as a young man, you have to figure out how each relationship, impacts your future, right? So going through college, it was the people who poured into me and helped me get to the NFL eventually, and then the people that looked to me to pour into them, right, to help kind of keep that train going. So when NIL hit, which was like the summer of 2021, the first thing I did was start a foundation. My foundation was the Jream Foundation. It's JREAM, Journey to Readiness and Academic Journey to Readiness through Academic Mentorship. Yeah, and basically, it's to serve all the kids who look like me, come from the places I come from, and under the environment that I was in. I was a kid who not only went to public school, and as we know, public school is it's on the median income, right? In private school, it's a different beast, right? So I was able to graduate college in 3 years. I was able to graduate high school in 3 years through education and through the system, but understanding that I had a lot of advantages and using the people and the resources and expanding my network would only help that next generation see what's possible.
Can I just comment on, like, when I first met Kayvon? So KLUTCH, JPMorgan Chase did a program with KLUTCH called KLUTCH Academy, and we took the pre-draft NFL and NBA athletes in one given year and started educating them about financial health. This also happened to be COVID time. And during COVID, if we all take us back to March of 2020, in May of 2020 was George Floyd's murder. And after that horrific incident, JPMorgan Chase made a $30 billion commitment to fight systemic racial inequities in the country, and by far the largest that any corporation has made. We talked about that on the call with the pre-draft class of athletes, and Kayvon then found in Los Angeles a group that was working on this racial equity commitment, a guy by the name of Chris Bean, who is literally an educator in the community to teach people about financial health. That's how we met. So, right away to your question about the authenticity, I knew that this was a desire of yours with your foundation to educate young students about financial health, and that meant something to me to help, manifest the story to go further.
And even just talking financial literacy, it's something we say every day, especially working with athletes, and they go through so many programs. But I'll start with Kayvon for your conversations, where are you leaning on for your financial conversations? And I'm personally curious, I always say this, like, what is the locker room conversation about finances? Are you guys talking about who your financial managers are, what you're invested in, the stocks? Like, what does that happen on the team?
Man, so small story, I always, connect it back to examples, but I read a book on Huey P. Newton, who was, the creator of the Black Panther Party, and his whole goal was to take information that he was getting and disperse it amongst his community in a way that they would understand it. So for me, I feel like I am the concierge to the information. I'm the guy who can, who's willing to put in the work to get the knowledge or the education needed. So when you talk about these conversations, they are new, right? When you're talking finances with family, friends, they are almost taboo, but I think you have to create a culture, around finance, right? I think people, me and Lois talked way back when, and it was like people rather hide their money in mattresses over putting them in the bank, and it's because having the lack of, because of the lack of trust and, the lack of understanding that, money is power and how you use it kind of defines your mark on the world. So, yeah.
And financial conversations now with NIL start in college, and obviously we had a program with KLUTCH, but when you're working with athletes now, I can look at college athletes, professional athletes, where are your pinpoints in using an athlete to help what JPMorgan is trying to tell, and where do you find that balance of financial literacy and helping what your marketing goals are?
Yeah, well, our market goals are monstrous in terms of how many different lines of business we have. So, you name a segment, we're going to hit it somehow, some way. But probably the biggest things that I work on are the community aspects, and that could go from underserved populations or underbanked populations, underbanked deserts, we call them, up to the very, very wealthy. So I think that probably one of the most important things is that I believe, and I think that data has shown us through our content success, that athletes have the best ability to cross segments, meaning they appeal to youth, they appeal to adults, they appeal to those that have, those who don't have, and that's unique when you really start thinking about celebrities. So I think that that's why and how we use athletes. The NIL space, I don't know if we want to dive deep into it now, but the NIL space is, I believe Kayvon was the #1 NIL earner.
I was the first.
The forefront of it.
Yeah, I was
The forefront.
in the beginning, but guys are.
Oh, now they're making a lot more than you made. But when but he's very smart about how he went about NIL. He did the research. He knew when the Supreme Court was going to vote on it, and at that juncture, you were prepared. You were prepared with going to 2 brands. Or 3, if I remember correctly, that you selected, that you wanted to be associated with, which I think is a real key point here. So he wasn't just waiting for the deals to come to him, he was proactive.
You're stealing some of my questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. We did practice a little. But we weren't one of the brands he came to. I just want I want to say that it wasn't JPMorgan Chase, and I do think that that's like a very important lesson for the NIL kids of today is who you're going to associate with brands. But I'm going to let you do your question. So sorry.
What for the NIL part with Kayvon, what's so interesting is that it is a cash grab, is what it's known to be. But I think being authentic to who you were, you saw it differently. And what was your plan when all of a sudden you're a college athlete, that a law changes and you can decide to make money or partner?
Yeah, so NIL, for those who don't know, is name, image, and likeness. And when you go to college, you sign it away. Same in the NFL, you kind of sign that away. But during that time, it was different. Right, I grew up in the iPhone era, so you talk about everything being on camera, understanding that everything is monetized. Like I grew up playing Monopoly, and this is a small joke, but like that's how a JPMorgan, that's how these companies they move. They buy everything up and they create value. Honestly, it comes down to creating value. That was it. So when NIL hit, it was like, how can I create enough value to sustain at a high level? And it started with aligning with the right company. So going into college, I went to the University of Oregon, go Ducks. They're doing great. You're going to win the college football playoff. But I went into it, and the first guy I saw was Phil Knight. And I told him, and I said, you're going to make a cleat for me one day. Right? And now I'm signed to Nike and everything, went as planned. But I had a plan, and I was bold in action. And I had faith in the plan, and I did what it took to, put it in order. And as when the time came to start, taking action on the relationships, on the seeds that I was planting, things were going well. So when she talked about the companies I went to, it was Nike, Beats,
and a drink.
And no, it was United as well. So for an athlete, I just had to, understand that your brand is everything. And me aligning with these companies allowed me to expand my network. Now coming to, JPMorgan, it's been amazing, right? So all the kids who are coming up after me have access to not only the, experience of meeting people in different rooms, but the access to the knowledge and the information, directly from the source.
And I would say, what advice would you give to the NIL, to the next generation? But you guys did a podcast together on it, and what do you think came from that and that discussion, and what is there for the next group?
Really, it's about longevity. I think that's the core answer, in the sense that everything we do is based on kind of small gains, right? We're not trying to just jump out and grab whatever is there. We want to constantly build And, we want to look back at what we've been able to do and the people we've been able to impact and be proud of it, and obviously make money while doing it. So I think, yeah, that's the key.
Yeah, I mean, I would answer it just a tad differently, and I think it's just through my lens, which is that I think that the advice I would give to any college athlete or any pro athlete or pretty much anybody is that in today's world, who you associate with, what brands you associate with, it's going to follow you for life. So you got to be really, really, really careful. And one aspect of that, because I do run the process of looking at talent and vetting talent, is, we won't work with people who have done stuff with a competitor a year ago. We don't want brand confusion. So just, you sign with something, you're trying to get a grab of money quickly. You want to make sure that this is a brand that you're going to be associated with for life, even if other people are looking at the story. The second thing that I would impress on any young person is, and I know we've all heard this, but you really have to think about it from the athlete lens, social media. It is so scary what's going on with social media, what's going on with fraud, what's going on with tracking people, that you need to be so careful with what you're posting, inflammatory language today, the geopolitical crisis, it's horrible what's going on out there, and those things are following you to the big brands as well. And then the third thing that I would say is, to what Kayvon was saying about longevity, is really think about the future for these, young athletes who are making some big dollars, like really big dollars. You probably know more than I know because you represent some of them. But they really have to think about, how do you start divesting? How do you put some money into a business? What is your passion points? What do you want to do? And I think that would be my advice: brand, divesting, and social media.
I would also add, just in closing, we go to the next question, but I think it's production over personality. In sports, we talk about being more focused on the task at hand rather than how you look doing the task, right? So I think just keeping the main thing in any field, not just athletes, but, knowing what the task is and excelling at that, or being excellent at that, so that you can, reap the benefits of the NIL of, getting paid.
It reminds me of the podcast we did called Zone In. Kayvon was the host, along with a guy by the name of
Chase
Griffith, who is a quarterback at UCLA, and we interviewed 5 different college athletes. One of them was a guy from an HBCU. He was called the King of NIL. Do you remember the story?
Yep.
He became the King of NIL because the night that the Supreme Court passed the law, he DM'd 100 companies. He was going for the small grab. He was at a nothing, no-name HBCU, and the next morning he woke up to 2 deals, and he now has 90 deals. It's crazy. And so he went for a different strategy. He went for all of the little deals that helped him add up this portfolio, creating all his own content. Very clever. It's a business.
And it's awareness, and not to be long, but if you're aware of your situation and how you fit in the world, you can act accordingly. I think, in my sport, we say the 2 most important factors is awareness and dedication, right? Are you aware enough to see what needs to be fixed, and are you dedicated enough, to do it? So.
And even starting as with NIL, you did this, and you're someone who asks questions and you put yourself in the rooms. How enticing is an equity deal and your personal portfolio? And when you're getting an introduction to a brand, our team calls you, are you asking about equity first? Where does that lie in your
I think
world
there's
right
a healthy balance. You always want to make sure today is satisfied, but you want to understand that, the value of cash is constantly going down. So the more money you give me now, the less money I have tomorrow, depending on the situation personally or with that said company. So for me, I think I always kind of go, maybe not 50-50, but I would always look for how much cash can we get and how much equity can we get, depending on the size of the company. Obviously, Nike isn't giving up any equity, so we're going to take as much cash as we can get. And, when it comes to startups, you always want to know what's the founder, what's their track record, and how is that ROI going to look, in time, because, 50% of zero is still zero. So, always understanding that who you tend to get in with, get in bed with in the company business or in the business space, it matters in the long run. So I like both, I'll tell you that.
Both is great. And the last topic, which I think is so important, especially with both of you, is what I keep on saying, it's the power of relationship and being in the rooms. And Kayvon, someone who will be in every room to meet everyone and really builds a great network. So who are those key people for both of you through your career that built that advice or your foundation to who you are today? As mentors or people that are adjacent to you or above you or wherever?
I guess, I'm the young guy, so it's always easy to see people who've done it the right way, right? So you look at a guy like LeBron, seeing him from the outside, looking in, it was a journey that I knew I could emulate. And Lois, talk about the passion that she has for the business and how much insight I've got. For me, it's like the blessing was not being afraid to ask questions, honestly. I will ask a question to the biggest fish in the room, and they're always happy to give an answer. So, not just Lois, but Rich, you, like the list can go on for young people, the resources that we have. I think it's just continuing to just ask the questions and be vulnerable with the people that you meet, to be honest.
Yeah, and I'm a huge believer in the importance of relationships and connecting the dots and helping people out whenever you can. Almost to a fault. My husband says I do it for everybody but him, but whatever. But I really do think that there's not a person that I can talk with that I wouldn't be able to figure out some kind of connection to JPMorgan Chase or how I could help them or kind of facilitate maybe their dreams, their goals, and I don't mean to be sounding so Pollyanna about this, but it's rare that the chemistry is there where you have a friend and a partner and it's doing good for your business. That doesn't come very easily. I've probably worked with, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of talents every single year, but it's rare to feel that specialness, which I just think is, just the benefit, personally.
Well, and that was perfectly to our time.
Oh, look at us,
Thank
0
you
minutes.
guys, and thank you everyone for joining
Thank you.
our conversation.